Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining Smartcat. And our topic for today is, are we AI there yet? As people are gathering into the webinar, we would be thrilled if you would let us know a recent use case for AI that you've encountered. If you would put that in the chat, we would love to hear from all of you. What kind of AI scenarios have you encountered recently? We'd love to see that. We'll get started in about a minute. And we have two wonderful guests today. Thank you to Megan Torrance and Marcus Bernhard for being here today. I'll give you a little background on each of them before we get started. Megan is the founder and CEO of Torrance Learning and a leader and innovator in the learning technology space. As the founder of the X-API learning cohort, she's been at the forefront of helping L&D professionals learn the new technology skills they need for over a decade. She's the author of Data and Analytics for Instructional Designers and the creator of the AI Driver's Permit. You can find her entry-level courses on AI at Open Sesame and Cornerstone content platforms. She's also a facilitator at eCornell in executive leadership and an adjunct at Penn State University's Learning, Design, and Technology program. Welcome, Megan. Marcus Bernhard is the leading AI strategist and consultant at Endeavor Intelligence, assisting organizations of all sizes, from Fortune 100 companies to smaller enterprises, in integrating AI to drive innovation and efficiency. As the AI strategy lead at the Learning Forum, Marcus facilitates executive groups like the AI Strategy Council, bringing together top leaders to exchange cutting-edge insights and develop strategies and solutions. Marcus co-leads the Thinking Effect, a not-for-profit serving L&D and talent professionals, and is the founding member of the AI Learning Collective. He's a sought-after speaker at major industry events and is known for his balanced, insightful views on AI strategy, as well as in enhancing learning and talent development. Welcome, Marcus. Welcome, Megan. It's so nice to have you here. And I think we have many, many people now on the webinar. So let's get started. Our agenda for today is as follows. We'll talk about AI adoption in L&D, some predictions for 2024 and 2025, the unknown unknowns that we should all be thinking about, and then very practical tips for evaluating AI solutions, which I think will be very helpful to our audience today. So let's kick it off and talk about where we are in the journey. I'm going to keep this little agenda here so we can keep track of each of our topics here. So let me first pose this question to Megan. When you think about AI adoption in learning and development, where are we in our journey, and how is that going?
It's fascinating. It's a student of kind of the macroeconomic and the diffusion of innovation throughout organizations and societies. It's fascinating to see this follow a very familiar path. And I think of and having done worked with XAPI for over a decade now, and now watching AI, the generative AI, right? AI has been around for decades. But to watch this recent explosion in interest in generative AI has been fascinating. And I'm seeing things move from, like many innovations, technological or otherwise, we move from a faster to a better to a different, and then a revolutionary. And right now we are all about faster, especially in L&D, right? How do I make content faster? How do I translate faster? How do I summarize concept faster? How do I make my multiple choice questions faster? All these things. And that's exciting. And we're also getting into that better space, right? How do I do things better? There's some recent work done by, if you haven't found it, go out and Google it. Don't chat GPT it, go Google it and get it actually from Philippa Hartman on how AI can power up an instructional designer and create amazing work. So there's faster and better right now. Different, I'm not sure we know what different looks like. We're getting some ideas of different. Revolutionary is going to be super exciting. This is a fantastic time to be alive and in our industry.
Thank you so much, Megan. Marcus, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the journey and where we are.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you. And always good to be in a conversation with Megan. From my point of view, there's two real challenges we're facing right now. And I think most people can relate to these. One is exhibition floors are right now a little bit like car shows. We go to exhibitions and conferences to find out what's happening and what the tools can and can't do. And we hear the good talks at the conference, but when we go to the exhibition floor, it's like a supercar car show. You're not allowed to touch the car, no one has a key. But everyone tells you how fantastic it would drive were you to drive it. And so where we used to find at least some learnings when we talk to vendors, this has become a really, really challenging space where going to the exhibition is no longer a proper learning exercise. It's almost to some degree just as chaotic as what we see on LinkedIn flying around, and there are only very few that are showing demos or even allowing hands-on. And recently in New Orleans at the ATD event, Smartcat was one of those few when I walked the floor, where I saw an actual demo taking place and people were allowed to interact and get hands-on. So there was a key for the car there. But generally, this is a big challenge. And then people go home and say, well, there were 3, 4, 5, 6 big things that we've seen. They all sound unbelievably exciting, but I have no idea in my head how to structure them in terms of priority or where I want to start. They all promise a lot. And that's difficulty number one. So where does that mean you start? And difficulty number two is that in organizations internally, we have been playing catch up, be it with AI policies, a topic we've seen at a lot of talks and panels and conferences, that AI policies have only just started emerging. And still half a year ago, we were saying 60 to 70% of orgs don't have one yet. And if that's moving slowly, then governance and committees and subcommittees are moving slowly. So organizations haven't organized themselves as well as maybe when things like the internet came along, because there's an additional channel that challenge that this is coming from both ends. We're burning the candle from both ends. Organizations have to have a top-down strategy and an idea how they want to do this, and they're just learning how this works and what the strengths and weaknesses are. And then people from the bottom are using it. They're doing courses, like Megan said. Yes, I mean, the courses GPT for instructional design are super popular right now, right? They're all over the shop. And so people are using it. People are even using the GPTs, and we know this. Sorry, guys, we know people are using it on their private laptop and emailing the results over to their work laptop, regardless of what the policy was or what the situation is. That's a big challenge. So I think these two really come together to make this a very difficult environment right now. And then, like Megan said, a lot is focused on the content. Let's do what we've been doing a little bit faster, a little bit better. And I'm not being derogatory here. That's simply how humans work. We need to grab the tools, try them out, and see how they work. That's a learning journey, and we have to go through that. But we're now also seeing the first integrated tools and platforms emerging that bring many of the tools together, where you don't have to purchase 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different tools and bring them together as an instructional designer, but they're in an integrated platform that will take bigger strides as we head into the future. And I think there's a hope that in the autumn series, there will be more hands-on when we head to those exhibition floors. Megan, what do you think to that add on to how you started?
You know, those faster, right? The how do I do my work faster? That's not just an individual learning curve. That's a societal learning curve, right? That's how these things go, right? But what's interesting, so AI, right, been around for decades, but it used to be behind great big barriers to access. You had to have computer science degrees. You had to have a lot of money, a lot of computing power, and a lot of training, and they were walled off. You couldn't just go and do it yourself. And what was built did very narrow, very specific use cases, and they handled very specific tasks that not everybody in the organization needs. And Gen AI tools, throw it up on a browser. me and a $20 credit card, and I can have access to some of the most powerful tools on the planet. And that's why people are really frustrated with their organizations, that they're not moving faster. It's why they're doing exactly what you said, Marcus. They're pulling it off and they're doing something over on their personal laptops and emailing it back in. And it's not connected and integrated into what they're doing. And I think this is natural. Because this is high risk. This is high risk for organizations. It's expensive to get it right, and they are taking that time to get there. Think about how challenging it's been for organizations to level up their data privacy protections, GDPR and SOC 2, and the amount of effort it takes to do that. And this is exponential on top. So I think it's appropriate for organizations to be moving slow at those core functions. And that's where, we'll get into this, I know, that's where L&D has a really interesting place to play, because we have some fantastic integrated tools and some cool things going on that are not necessarily core to the organization's functioning. And so we provide a great playground, but we'll get to that.
And I think it's really this challenge of having to learn the tools without being able to turn somewhere where we can learn about them. The learning programs are always 1, 2, 3 steps behind how the tools work. There are, of course, people out there, and Philippa Hardman is one of them, Josh Cavalier is one of them, who help with the tools, and that's fantastic. But when things move more slowly, there's more opportunities out there, and more opportunities for organizations to say, okay, here's a few courses that are highly recommended that others have done. We can upskill our teams now. Then we will have caught up, and then for the next 2 years we can go back into business as usual. And that's the additional challenge here. I keep saying channel today. That's the additional challenge today, which is we're not used to this fast a changing environment. That poses a bigger risk for leaders, and it makes it very restless for employees. Employees did not choose an entrepreneurial career where they're in a startup. Possibly for a reason, maybe not thought through. Maybe they just landed where they landed. I certainly didn't think my career through whatsoever. I just landed where I landed and kept working, and then ended up a step ahead again. But this is a huge deal that we can't plan the future as we used to, and we can't have that long-term vision as we used to. And so even leadership needs to rethink its role in terms of being more reactive and running faster, harder use cases and trying things. And in our corporate world, despite many books, many podcasts, many shows and panels that say you have to have a certain risk, you need to run experiments, despite us all liking posts when they say at Amazon they expect 9 out of 10 things to fail, because they're searching for the 1 in 10 that is the home run hit, and no one gets fired for the other 9. We know we need to go across those 9 that didn't work really well to get to the 10th that is a smash hit. Or Mark Randolph, who founded Netflix, keeps saying to everyone, every idea is a bad idea. The whole point is that when you're an entrepreneur, despite having found 20 reasons why this isn't a great idea, you start thinking, but is there a way we could kind of make this work? And then you start, and then things develop, and then you don't know where you're going to head. Also, not a long-term plan. That's why we love saying people pivot. But these entrepreneurial aspects in a fast-changing world, we're not used to those in the corporate world. We're used to having experienced leaders who say, this is what the next 5 years are. And then we can follow that, and we can implement that strategy. So in the necessity to update nonstop and to experiment, we really need to change our mindsets. And I sometimes compare this to maybe a burn budget that we used to have in marketing, where a certain element of the budget goes for slightly crazy experiments. Don't quote me too much on the word crazy there, but you have a few wild ideas and you try them out, and one of them might land, and we call that the burn budget, where we go a little bit more off piece than we normally would, and again, no one sits down in the review meeting and says, oh, we wasted the burn budget. We've even given it that name. So no, we need to run experiments. And so RFPs need to be run at a shorter time frame. The experiment has to be run on a shorter time frame, and we have to test and see what we get out of a solution, how well it works for us, and then we expand. We don't go through a 6-month RFP with lots of tests and then we sign a 5-year deal. That's right now not the route to go, but that's what we're all used to. So the challenge isn't just that the AI is coming in and that the tools are changing, but that is also changing how we should be doing the job and what the challenges there are. So and that restlessness we can even see is starting to pose challenges in terms of burnout among staff. It's been a very difficult time post-COVID to dive straight into the next crisis of AI. Megan, you're nodding.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I'm cracking up and looking over at my watch and realizing it's not even 15 minutes into the webinar on AI, and we're talking about people, we're talking about leadership, and we're talking about psychological safety, right? We're talking about innovation. We're not talking about bits and bytes and figures on keyboards kind of things. And I think that's the key here, is that leadership perspective on how we go about doing this and setting that up, because for generations, leadership works with that leader telling everybody what to do. And right now leaders are thinking, oh my gosh, it's technology, I'm not quite sure what to do with it. And so making that safe space to fail, I think, is 100% key. As an organization moves fast, yesterday I was having a conversation with a company, and we talked about the KPIs for AI adoption. Right? How do we know if we're getting it right within the L&D team, right? So we talked about no kidding, what came up, one of the things that came up with are people completing your AI literacy courses, right? And that's a base level, but if they're not even engaging there, that's a situation. The next though is the quantity of experiments and the length of time that goes between new experiments and how long a particular experiment survives. Right? If you've got right now, if you have a 6-month-old GPT, it might be time to retire it and rebuild it. Right? I mean, things are moving too fast to have old experiments that don't change. So that was a really fascinating conversation that we had around how do we know if we're getting it. We're also looking at how do we talk about how a leader engages in this space. Right? I know senior leaders who are excited, passionate, and cannot wait to get in with their teams and learn with their teams, and they're building communities of practice in order to be able to learn with and from their team, because they realize their team can exponentially learn faster than any one individual. So they're building these communities to make that happen. And I know senior leaders who have found that this is a fantastic time to retire. And we saw a little bit of that at the pandemic as things, it became too uncertain and people were able to say, no, I'm going to sit this one out. This is the next wave, and it is coming fast on the heels. Right? Talking about the rate of change. This is fast on the heels and just as transformational as the pandemic was. And there are folks who are saying, now I'm really tired. So it's an interesting dynamic here. So
That's great.
lots to go on. Andrew,
Yeah.
would you like to get a word in edgewise?
No, actually, I'm just looking at the wonderful comments. So thank you for everyone for telling us how you're using AI. And I think I saw one here about, I've used it as proposing having the subject matter experts use AI to generate the first rough draft of a training course, which I think is really interesting. So thank you all for putting the comments here, and please ask your questions in the Q&A as we go. We don't want to wait until the end of this. If you have a thought or a question, please put it in the Q&A section versus the chat, and we will answer one by one. Yeah, it is a confusing time, but an exciting and an opportunistic time as well, and I think that's so true. When you think about the future, given so much is going on right now, it's almost hard to think that far out. But what do you see on the horizon the next 6 months for the rest of this year and next year? And what should people be thinking about beyond sort of the experimentation that we were talking about? And trying new things. And maybe this relates to some of the policies that are not in place or some of the things that might not be there yet, but would love to hear, maybe Marcus, you could start. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what people should be thinking about.
I think we're going to see two interesting worlds collide, and my crystal ball is not good enough to predict this one. I think professionals are experimenting more and more with the tools. They're realizing more what strengths and weaknesses a chatbot has, what strengths and weaknesses a chatbot wrapper around the product from 2 years ago has, and are becoming better at identifying that what someone is trying to give them is just an e-learning from 3 years ago with a chatbot added on the back of it, where you can now interact with your course. Again, I'm not being derogatory. We need to go through this learning journey. We need to get to know how things work, and we need to realize what the smoke and mirrors are, and we need to realize where the product is. And we'll get into deeper conversations with vendors at their stand. At the same time, this collides with the time where we are drastically starting to move away from chatbot wrappers around the product from 2 years ago, at least for the majority. There are also some really interesting AI companies out there that have been on this journey for much longer and have built from scratch, and those are the ones who are offering more integrated solutions, who are already doing some demos. These conversations will all become much better because both sides are starting to understand better what they're talking about, and both sides can meet in the middle and task one another with questions and answers in this learning journey. And so I think there'll be a real boost in the level of understanding and the level of conversations we're having, especially compared to 18 months ago. I was at so many stands where inquired with the sales team what was going on here, and the amount of people who told me that they're building their own LLM was utterly exciting. I don't know how often I said, no, Salesforce are building their own LLM, you are not. Can you please go back and ask which one you're deploying and how it's integrated / how it's API'd / what exactly it is you're doing and which one are you using. So these are the two things that I see for the autumn conference and exhibition series coming our way. And I think this will be great because we will hopefully get a step back towards those events being learning journeys for us, where we go and we come back with really good information. And we can see behind Andrew there, we're going to talk about evaluating tools also at the end of this conversation. So we will sort of get back to that. But those are the two worlds that I think are moving mainly in our direction. Megan, how do you see things?
More and better, right? I think you're right. Last fall's conference series, lots and I mean, expos were bigger, more packed. A lot of folks new to the learning and development industry, which is interesting, right? So AI plays from the outside that bring fantastic new innovations and interjections, but also may not, right? They may miss the boat from a learning perspective. And so it'll be interesting to make sure that those innovations, those new products, are serving our needs in the learning, that learning space. I think the other thing, we will start to see truly profound uses of AI. Maybe not even technologically challenging, but as people are really thinking about this, you mentioned 18 months ago, Marcus, about that time, Owen Holt, who I can't remember where he was then, said, we are in the bag phone days of AI, right? It will never be as bad as it is right now, right? It is the worst it is right now. And if you think about, and I'm going to date myself, in 1993, I had one of those over-the-shoulder AT&T big old, I had a bag phone, a mobile phone that was bigger than any purse I carry today. And it had a big old antenna. It had a crummy battery. Its service was horrible and only available in major metro areas, but not underneath a big building, right? We gave up quality for the affordances of being able to take telephone calls on the road, right? Now this thing rings. I don't want a telephone call. I use it for so many other things. And I want us to be thinking about AI. I want us to be thinking about data. I want us to be thinking about these other kinds of adaptations in our market, like the difference between a bag phone 30 years ago and the smartphone you carry right now. Oh, and all the wearables and the devices and the things that you have connected, so you don't have to carry your phone anymore. So those things are coming out. I think that we'll start to see real traction. I think that we'll start to see lots and lots of tools in the faster space. So I love, Marcus, you're taking the vendor perspective. I'm going to take the industry and the human pipeline, right? The talent channel perspective. I'm an adjunct at Penn State University in their introductory master's program, instructional systems design course. And quite honestly, as a hiring manager at Torrance Learning, as an adjunct professor, I don't want to hire an instructional designer who won't use these tools, who doesn't know how to use these tools and use them really well. And so that, I think, is key. The other thing I'm seeing is a fascinating focus on ethics and governance, right? A responsible, transparent, ethical use. And again, dating us, right? The early days of the internet, we had to figure out literacy and ethics on our own. I don't recall anybody talking about it. And then, right, a decade into that, my son goes to school and they teach that in library. Library becomes a technology course, and in technology library, they're teaching kids internet literacy, how to critically evaluate what it is that they get online. And I remember that moment thinking, oh, wow, right? And yet now, right, November 2022, ChatGPT comes out. Yes, AI's been around, and AI critiques of ethics and bias have been around, right? Pre-pandemic and before. Right? But all of a sudden, we're seeing a focus on ethics, governance, and all of that responsible use. It's fascinating. We're doing we call it the AI driver's permit. And it's a course on AI literacy. And it is, it's not prompting focused, it's ethics and transparency focused with prompting along the way to support, right? That's how you practice. That's not the thing. And so this interest here is, I think, really mature of us as a species to be thinking about this early on in the revolution.
And
Thank you.
for me, the image I was painting there from the two sides interacting at the conference and on the exhibition floor, I think we can zoom out of that sort of into organizations large and small and say, we're going to take those learnings back to the organization. Within the organization, we will have looked at mindsets, we will have looked at new approaches, we will have looked at training and upskilling, both of the teams that are doing the job, but also of the subcommittees and subcommittees. If you are a C-suite member or you lead your function and you're sitting on a committee, when it comes to AI governance and AI strategy, you have, sorry to be so blunt, you have just as much experience as the new joiner from college, if not less, when it comes to AI and when it comes to generative AI. You're not in a position to perfectly do the strategy because you are a senior member of the team. Yes, there are a lot of skills and knowledge that are required to be a senior member and to sit on that committee. But when the decisions are made about AI, we need to have as much AI knowledge as possible at that table. And I think that is now also starting to catch up. The visions are becoming better, the ideas, and those two movements will form a much more coherent approach and idea around this. And I think in that we will also see the idea of the experiments emerge as a core piece of the strategy. Of course, we know that different companies in different sectors with different products and services, if we're in the health sciences and we have patients, then we have a very, very different approach to what we need to track and what data privacy means for us than if we're selling an app that rests on a mobile phone and is basically a game. And everyone else in between has also got their own sort of level of privacy and ethics interests on that scale. But I think the emergence will be here more through the people meeting a slowly emerging strategy than the strategy coming from the top. When the internet came along, all the internet guidance in an organization came from the top down. The organization decided it wanted a website, and the organization decided what it wanted to do with it. No one on the marketing team came to a meeting and said, I've just built a website for Nike, by the way, for our marketing function. It's already up and running. I don't know how we're going to collide with what the bigger management wants. Have they secured Nike.com? But we've done our own thing over here at NikeMarketing.com. That didn't happen. With this transformative force that is coming our way, that is the equivalent of what's happening here. And that's what I think all those comparisons fall flat on their face when it comes to how big this is as a wave that's coming our way. Because in none of the other revolutions was it so much from both ends.
Well said, Marcus. We have a question here that I just wanted to pose to both of you. What are the best practices for using AI in learning? And what do you see as a reliable platform? Maybe I'll start with Megan. What are your thoughts about that?
I think that's such a fantastic question and a super broad question, right? Because I'm going to take the traditional consultant's way out here and say it depends, right? First, you want to align with what are your organization's goals. I can't tell you if Copilot or Gemini or ChatGPT or something, that a custom-built mobile coach solution is going to be the best solution for you. It depends on what your goals are, what your organization's overall culture around technology and innovation are, and your team's skills and your relationships with your providers. So it's from a best practices perspective, it's to start with that alignment. And here's the thing, somebody asked me the other day in a session, right? How do I evaluate whether or not we're doing this well? And I say it's the same way we evaluate whether or not we're doing learning and development well. Are we meeting the goals that our organization has for us, that we have for ourselves? And rather than measuring our use of AI, right? How many times did we use AI, or how efficiently did it? Somebody told me the other day that they cut 75% of the time out of creating a report. Fantastic. I love it, right? That's amazing. I used to, right, make graphs in Excel and screenshot them and throw them into a PDF and email it to people. The fact that you could get more and better data faster with less effort is fantastic. My bigger question is, who reads the report? What's its intention? Why are we doing the report in the first place? And until we're sure that we've got that part right, making it 75% faster is maybe not interesting. Right? So aligning there with that strategy, I think, is the number one best practice you can use. Everything else is implementation.
We very often, I'm totally with Megan again on this one as well. We very often get the question of what is the best tool out there currently, and what we need to do to answer that is we need to dive into how many different types of tools are out there, and what can they be used for, and therefore. The question is a little bit like the question, what vehicle is the best to get around town? It depends on the kind of town, the kind of traffic, and how far you want to go. And so I think this is a really important question, but we need to take one step back and we need to say exactly where are we right now and what type of solution do we want? There are Fortune 500 companies out there who have over 20 GPT agents that can answer questions about different HR policies right now. And some of the organizations have even got these GPT type agents from different LLM providers. So they're not all from OpenAI, just because I'm using the word GPT here. And so it's a very convoluted market, and we need to know exactly where we're sitting in that space and where we're asking this question. An integrated solution that helps us build programs of learning better and faster and more personalized, leading to very precise learning outcomes, and having clearly defined learning objectives right off the bat. That is becoming a really good use case with these technologies. There I'm seeing a lot of movement, and in the better and faster world, we're seeing those time restrictions lifted that Megan was talking about, and we're seeing that also in other spaces, like for example in simulations. These bigger programs, these bigger tools, they used to be super big budget, huge projects that only the biggest organizations could do. If you look at some of the use cases out there right now, I've seen that a big organization has built a full-on simulation with scenarios and branchings and interactions and decision making for an organization for under 50 of their special leadership fast cohort. And that fast cohort goes through several workshops during the year, and only during one of those workshops was this one of the little toys they played with to experience different things, to reflect on their decisions, and to talk to one another about their experiences. 5 years ago, that was totally unthinkable. That the budget you would have needed would have made 500 team members questionable whether that's big enough a cohort to warrant something that boutique and niche. That's where we're seeing a really good shift now, and this comes both when it comes to those kind of simulations that used to be utterly boutique, but also now towards much more truly personalized learning journeys that take strengths and weaknesses into account and branches you to where you need to be, paired with the functionality of performance support that you can also dive in and ask questions and interact with the system. Because there might be moments where you're saying, now I'm going to focus the next 35 minutes on my formal learning journey, and there might be moments where you think, oh, this was just in the course I've just done, but I've forgotten. Let me just go in and query that very quickly. These types of solutions are becoming a lot better, and that's where I think when the speed and the quality goes up like that, also the role of L&D is going to change, and it will be more of an operational function that has to react to business needs, and at much shorter timescales. The L&D function will understand learning and will understand the tools, and will therefore be able to deploy them in the same way that the marketing function understands the marketing tools and needs to still understand marketing. You can't just sit someone in there in marketing who has no clue about marketing and say, here are the jazzy tools, do some marketing. That doesn't work. So I'm not saying we're losing the L&D function. I'm saying we're going to be more operational and quickly reacting. And the real challenge here is that we're facing a double whammy. We need to focus on how in learning and talent development our role is changing and how we're using the tools and which tools we're using. And at the same time, we need to stay on top of how the roles and the way the work is done is changing for those people we're supposed to support as our mission. And that's a really difficult one to stay on top of. And that's why we in the people function, for many reasons, have probably got the biggest challenge waiting for us, because we have to be on top of, ideally, everyone else's while we're also developing ourselves. And then while I'm talking about these bigger tools, I mean, Megan, you're in the space of also bespoke solutions for very targeted purpose. So you can maybe add to that one as well.
Sure thing. I want to go back first to something you said about getting the learning objectives right, the performance objectives, right? If you have magic tools that can make time evaporate, right? It is really dependent on us to get the objectives and the strategy and that alignment with goals really, really spot on. Khalid, I want to come to one of Khalid's questions in the chat around how Gen AI can leverage whether, and I'm going to say schools, higher ed, or corporate learning, right? To provide personalized learning experiences really, really rapidly. That gets Marcus to the example you shared about the leadership learning, right? And how I can power up very, very quickly an incredibly personalized experience. The other thing, so the example you mentioned, thanks for teeing that one up for me. So we've been able to create a bespoke learning experience that supports physician education. Can support customer service. We have a demo in pitch mode right now with a consulting firm that does leadership development around case-based practice challenges for learners that really gets them thinking, right? So long, for decades, you know what? We have these fantastic e-learning authoring tools, folks, that help us crank out multiple choice questions like there is no tomorrow. And the world is not multiple choice. I do not want my physician to be imagining a multiple choice question with a bunch of answers behind my head and thinking, I'm going to choose C because C is usually the answer in these things. No, I want my physician, I want her to think and to come up with something unique and personalized. So we worked with the American Spinal Injury Association, which, for example, for just full disclosure, we've been making multiple choice e-learning for 15 years for them. But we have a fantastic opportunity in which we're building the learning design, and we have their learning platform, and it's a learning management system with a full-on XAPI inside the hood. So it allows us to do a lot of really cool things as we're starting to combine learning design and data. And the EMMA, that's what we call it. The EMMA poses a case challenge, just like doctors do when they're learning in person, right? And we can put in a situation, we can put radiology, we could put history and labs and all sorts of information about this case. And then instead of asking a multiple choice question, we give that physician a big old white empty text box. And they've got to, just like real life, they have to generate a response to that situation. How would they handle it? Now, behind the scenes, what we haven't done is taken the humans out of it. We have 3 human answers to those cases. And I will tell you, that's the bottleneck in this production, is getting 3 experts to give us answers to every case. But the AI service, to Marcus, to your point about evaluating how these things are designed, the AI service then goes, compares the learner's answer with those 3 answers and gives personalized feedback. What did you do well? What did you do wrong? What did you miss altogether? Right? That framework, everybody, we can all do this. You can go out and do this right now. Check your organization's AI policies before you do this on the computer at work. You can go build a GPT that will do exactly this in small scale for you. Right? It's not complicated. What's the challenge is creating that environment and building that appropriately around the learning experience to support exactly what you want, not just the new shiny.
Yeah. And this is one of those case studies. I saw you present at Demo Fest, which I found super interesting, and you should have won that year, by the way. And we're seeing these really bespoke solutions here. Also now start to rub against the larger integrated solutions, and it's a really exciting landscape there to evaluate in terms of for which use case do I want to utilize which tool, which brings us back to, we can't name the one. We need to say, what is it you're trying to achieve? What is your use case? And that kind of brings me also to the tips for the evaluation, which we wanted to send people home with as well, which is when you're looking at the tools, every AI tool, every learning solutions has, in my head, 3 pillars. Number 1, the information the system has access to. For an LLM, that's all the knowledge on the internet and the prompts that you've so far shared together in the chat. For an adaptive learning system, it's someone's strengths and weaknesses, the curriculum and the content that is available. In the middle, we have the piece that says, and this is how we use that information to come to a decision. And in the end, there's an output that says, and that's why this is now the output. In an LLM, it's what you get back from an LLM. In an adaptive learning system, it's the next node it sends you to. But we can always say, what's the information? How is it being used to make a decision? And how does it come to an outcome? And when we have those three pillars in mind for any solution we're working with, and we have jot down our own notes, then we will quickly understand why there are strengths and weaknesses, why certain things work really well and why other things don't work well. And you do not need a computer science degree or any knowledge in AI to have such a workflow there. And if you have such a one-pager, on the right-hand side, every time you have a conversation, you make additional notes. And you also, after the conversation, because we always walk away from these conversations and think 10 minutes later, oh dear, I should have asked this. Write that question down on that one-pager so that in your next conversation, you start asking that question, you compare the answers you get from different people, and you build your own understanding of these tools. That's how you will get through the model of looking at different solutions and guiding yourself with your own knowledge. And it will also be your own upskilling journey, because no one will present you with that information. You can share in your team, of course you can, but do not sit there and wait for all your organization to provide this training for you so that you are then ready to go through the next RFP. That would be my sort of practical tip and takeaway from my end. Megan, what practical tips for the evaluation can you send our viewers home with?
One, write down Marcus's three pillars, because I think they really provide that structure for that conversation. I'll add maybe a fourth pillar, which is, does this solve a problem I actually have in a way that's better than my current solution? Right. So we've applied that for 15 years at Torrance Learning, because believe me, and so one of the dangers around our office is that I go to a conference and I come back with all sorts of cool, shiny tools. I love me a good, shiny tool. And so question number one for us is, does this solve a problem we actually have in a way that's better than our current solution? But those four pillars, three plus one pillars, I also operate within your organization's approach to technology and innovation. So I see people get very, very frustrated when they are moving and moving and moving very fast in an organization that is very conservative. And vice versa. If you're in an organization that moves very, very fast, and you and your team are taking a conservative approach to L&D, and your L&D technology stack, that's going to be at odds, right? So if you and your organization, I want you to think about, right, what tools does your organization have? Are you still batch loading things into a black and green mainframe screen? You might be working at a conservative organization, right? If the software you use is updated every single week because it is that fresh and new, you might be working at an organization in which you have a move fast and break things approach to technology and innovation. Right? So you want to match what you're doing to that overall culture for your best success. Right? So if you're moving fast, I want you to reach out to make stuff yourself. If you have an in-house dev shop, go ahead and make them brownies, be good best friends, talk to them. Volunteer to be the pilot crew, that test group for them. Right? And reach out to your vendors. And there are a few vendors who know that when something cool comes along, I'm going to call them up and say, hey, do you do this? Right? So the UL LearnShare LMS in 2012, 2013, I remember calling up and saying, hey, do you do this thing called it's called Tin Can? It was even before it's called XAPI. And you could hear on the other end, Google, what is it, right? The answer is yes, we should. Great, let's go. I want to be your beta tester. And so I tend to be in a move fast space. When you are moving fast, you also have to spend a lot of time paying attention to data privacy and protections and ethics, because you are likely to bump into them. If you are moving fast, that's something you want to keep very forefront. If you're in a slower, more conservative organization, that is not necessarily a bad place to be. You will spend less money and you will make fewer mistakes. Those aren't bad things in life, right? So you don't want to be so slow that you get left behind. On the other hand, right, the leading edge is often the bleeding edge, and that's sharp and pointy sometimes. If you're in a smaller organization or a more conservative organization, you're going to want to be definitely paying attention and you're going to watch what your vendors do. Your vendors, folks, your vendors are a fantastic resource for you. They, right? You have one budget. They have a little bit of everybody's budget. They also have insight into everybody else's workflows and processes. And so what they're doing is they are, hopefully, knock on wood, creating a best practice process flow for each of the use cases that are common in the industry. That then lets you tap into what they're learning, and you can learn from that at a much lower risk to yourself and a much lower cost to yourself. And as long as you are asking them these questions, right, their responsibility, or they have first responsibility, you have a serious part in it, in data protections, right? So you'll want to ask those questions 100%, but you don't have to take care of them yourselves.
Thank you both so much, Megan, Marcus. I know we're a little bit over time here. I just want to thank everyone for participating, for your questions, for your comments and your stories that you put about AI. Really appreciate that. And I know there's so much more to talk about on this topic, so hopefully we'll do a follow-up webinar to continue the conversation. Thank you both. And for those of you who don't know, Smartcat created a AI for learning content, which allows you to create full courses, including avatar videos and readings and quizzes and things. If any of you have interest in looking at that, please contact me at andrew@smartcat.ai. Thank you both so much, and I hope everyone has a good day.
Thank you, Andrew. It's been a
Andrew.
real pleasure. And Megan, always great
to
see you and chat. This has been fantastic. Thank you.
Wonderful. It's time for coffee for all of you on the West Coast.
Exactly.
Thank you. Bye-bye.